And this month in Cheshvan is the month of my father's birthday. My father's birthday was Zayin Cheshvan. He came to the Rebbe also in this month, Tafshin Chaf Aleph, 1960, Tafshin Chaf Beis, excuse me, 1961. But I just want to share a couple of anecdotes and then we'll start learning. We're on page Chaf Beis, Halacha Tezvav. Nether, I'll try to share a few the next couple of study times. My father was Nichidus with the Rebbe, and my father told the Rebbe, one of the local organizations that was doing Mitzoyim, there was a lot of things about it that was not that organized. It was just, in those years, things were starting out, and my father had come from a college background, was used to a much more of a structured environment. And the Rebbe actually wanted my father to give input about what was happening because he wanted to make things more attractive and more comfortable for people to come, to come to Lubavitch. But anyway, so my father said to the Rebbe a bunch of issues that he felt were, needed to be fixed in the organization. Things were not running right. And the Rebbe said to my father, in this pronunciation, we need constructive criticism. Another time when after my father had come to 770 and started learning, he started learning in Asar B'Teves, the year of Tafshin Chav Beis, right after Hanukkah. The Rebbe said an expression, his name is Hanukkah, he should come study here around Hanukkah time because he was finishing up his semester. The Rebbe told him to finish his semester. But after studying here for a certain period of time, the Rebbe he was going back to university, and it was around Purim time, I think. The Rebbe told him to speak to the students about Yiddishkeit and to go out, share about Yiddishkeit. And my father said to the Rebbe, he doesn't feel comfortable doing that. So the Rebbe said to my father, whether you feel comfortable or don't feel comfortable, if a Yid knows Aleph, he teaches another Yid Aleph, just by the very fact that you were by Har Sinai. A Yid knows Aleph, teaches another Yid Aleph, another Yid, Beis, he teaches another Yid Beis. And then the last thing the Rebbe told, one more anecdote, is the Rebbe told my father once, in this pronunciation, I think the word was, you are a pioneer. That's how the Rebbe said it. Like he was starting the movement of bringing Yiddishkeit to the campuses. Anyway, okay. That's just a little bit of a dose of chizuk to start the day. Halacha Tezvav. So we were discussing the very common scenario of taking a pot that let's say it was a fleishiga pot that was used to cook a par food. Let's say I cooked pasta in a fleishiga pot. So we said last week, do we have to wait 6 hours after eating the pasta? The answer is absolutely not. The whole reason for waiting 6 hours is only if there's actual meat present, right? So we spoke about the two opinions, meat between the teeth, the aftertaste of the meat in the system. That doesn't apply if you just have a vessel. So there's no need to wait. The second question is, am I allowed to take the par food and eat it together with its opposite kind of pot? In other words, if I have, let's say, pasta that was cooked in a fleishiga pot, can I empty the pasta from the fleishiga pot and mix it with cheese in a different vessel? It's in a disposable, whatever. Can I do that? That's a secondary question. This question is more involved. There's actually a few substrates to the question. And I want to first explain the structure to the question, then we're going to go into the details. In halacha, which we're studying, of course, now, there's a difference between lechatchila and b'di'evet. Lechatchila means how we're supposed to go about it from the onset. And b'di'evet means after it's already done. And there's another dimension in halacha, which I want to share with you. There's also a concept known as a shas hadchak, a situation of duress, has the same din as b'di'evet. Now, so we're going to learn, there's what we do lechatchila, how we're supposed to approach the matter. And then there's a question, if something was already done, it's a secondary question, it's a different question. What do we do with that at that point? Now, To understand this even deeper, I want to give a little mashal. When it comes to genealogy, it's not my field of expertise, but we know brother and sister cannot marry each other. Even first cousins marrying each other is considered to be maybe not healthy because the gene pool is not properly diversified, right? But second cousins, as far as I know, it's not considered to be something to be concerned about because you have, at that point, 8 sets of parents, there's so much diversification, you're good to go, right? You're well diversified. You can weather the market conditions, yes? So in a similar kind of sense, I'm using this as a mashal, but in halacha, so the actual milk and meat, which would be the brother and the sister, you cannot mix them together. It's forbidden. The taste of milk and meat, which would be first cousins, you also cannot mix them together. But the taste of meat with a taste of dairy would not create a problem. So, for example, if I take pasta that's cooked in a clean fleshige pot, right? And then I take pasta cooked in a clean milchige pot, and I mix the two pastas together, nothing's really going to happen. Now, why is that? Because the prohibition of basa b'cholov is the creation of something. Other prohibitions in halacha, when it comes to the world of food, are already prohibited. For example, we're not allowed to eat animals that are non-kosher species. They are who they are, right? An animal of a carnivorous nature, non-kosher animals, they're behemoths tameus. They're not kosher already. There's nothing that we can do to make them kosher, and there's nothing that they did to make themselves kosher. They're always non-kosher, finished. Basar b'cholav is a unique prohibition because separately, the basar and the cholav are something that we have all the time. You may have had milk for breakfast, you may have had your smoothie, I don't know, whatever it is, coffee and milk, and then for dinner tonight you're going to, for Shabbos meal, you're going to have fleishes, you'll have meat. We have them both, the permissible material. So what is the prohibition? The prohibition is to create a new entity of the mixture of basar b'cholav. So basar b'cholav is already a new mitzvah, it's called basar b'cholav. The basar b'cholavs separately are fine. Now, to be able to create something, you need to have potency. So at a certain point, when the taste is so far diluted, it does not. It lacks the potency to create a new matzias, an issue known as basar b'cholav. So the example I gave you is if you have the pasta cooked in the fleshige pot, right? So it's a taste of meat because there was a taste of the meat that went into the pot, and then the water boiling, right, receives that taste. Okay, so now that the pasta has absorbed a taste of a taste, so it's a secondary taste. It's a grandchild of fleishigs, and then the other pasta, an example I gave you, the grandchild of milchigs. The grandchild can marry. It's okay, not a problem. There's an expression in Yiddish: a kosher top and a kosher leffel. It's okay. A kosher pot and a kosher spoon is not a problem. Good. Anyway, okay, so that's a general concept. I just want to bring out a point that there is this concept of potency in terms of creating this Isser, and it comes to relate to this point. One last point I want to introduce, and then we're going to go inside. There's also a concept in halacha that's known as tam pogum, which means a taste that's already a spoiled taste, and tam teri, which means a fresh taste. So if the pot was used for meat within the last 24 hours, it has an absorption in the walls of the vessel that's going to be a fresh taste. But if it was not used within the last 24 hours, whatever absorption is in the vessel is considered to be a spoiled taste, and therefore it's not going to make something usser after the fact. Doesn't mean we're allowed to do certain things initially, but after the fact, it wouldn't make it usser. So let's look inside now. Halacha tezvav. Linyan hashela hashniya. Regarding the second question, the papilo and the vashal michael stomach. The papilo stomach should not cook a parv food. The word stam means plain, which means in this case parv. The kedera besaris and a fleshige pot and daita lachlam parv with the intention of eating it with dairy. Papilo b'diavad, even b'diavad, and krabisho michael stomach b'kedera besaris. If someone already cooked a food, a parv food, in a fleshige pot, no yagim b'nei Ashkenaz lahachmir. Ashkenaz ma'machmir not to eat it together with dairy. Even if it's a clean pot, Ashkenazim are not to eat this food with dairy. As far as I'm lenient about it, by the way. However, if the pot was not used within the last 24 hours, there was no meat cooked in this pot within the last 24 hours. One would be allowed to eat this dish together with dairy after removing the food from the dish, of course. Because the taste that's absorbed in the walls after 24 hours, it's already considered, it's already spoiled and it's calculated. It gets ruined. It lacks the potency to make another food awesome. This is all talking about if the food was already cooked in a fleshig pot. One not allowed to cook a part of food in a fleshig pot, even if it's not a ben yom, in with the intention of taking the food out to have it with dairy. Let's pause for a moment. We just said three things actually. We said that if the pot was used within the last 24 hours, then you're not allowed to mix the pasta together with milk, according to the way that there are more paskins, which is how we follow. Let's start the lenient about that. If the pot was not used within the last 24 hours, you are allowed to eat that pasta with dairy. However, that's only after the fact that it was already made. So you're not supposed to take the pot with the intention of saying, "Oh, I'm going to cook here and I'll use it with dairy." You have leftover pasta and it's fine. If it was pot that wasn't used within the last 24 hours, you could then take it from there and mix it with dairy. I'll take the question in a moment. What happens if someone has no other pots? So the example I like to give is you're hosting Shabbat brachos for your friend, and you need to cook pasta for 25 people, and the only pot you have is a 16-quart pot, is a fleshig pot, right? So then, if the pot was not used within the last 24 hours, you are allowed to use it, because if you have no other pot to use, it's called a shas al-chak, and then has the same din as b'di evid. You have to be careful, obviously, mindfully. You put the pasta in there, drain it, then remove it to another vessel. But that would be like if you're having, let's say, enough for just Shabbat brachos. Okay. Then calls of chatchila b'di evid shekvar nisoriv hamachil in cholvit. So that's all talking about chatchila. But if the food is already mixed with other foods, let's say, for example, I took the pasta out of the pot and I mixed it with dairy. Mutar v'machil b'achila. The food is permissible to eat. Afilo heisa hagdera b'sori b'asiyam. Even if the pot was a ben yaimei. Any questions? Actually, I want to say one more thing, and then I'll take the question. This halacha is very relevant for a lot of reasons, but it's also relevant for those Yidden that don't keep Kol Yisrael, and they have a product that says on the DE, dairy equipment. Let's say it's a cookie, dairy equipment. It does not have actual dairy in it, but it was baked on equipment, whatever. I don't know how they manufactured it, but dairy equipment was clean somehow. Or it could be a drink or whatever it is. So according to this halacha, the Sfardim would be allowed to eat such a food right after a fleshig gemir. The true the Sfardim. But even Ashkenazim, if the I'm sorry, I just mixed something up. I apologize. I confused something. That's regarding eating after. Sorry, scratch that. It's a separate point. Yes, question.
The pot was only for the past 24 hours. Are you allowed to mix like pasta and use them either gas?
So the answer is that one should not plan to do that, meaning if you're planning to make pasta with cheese, do it on the very side. But if you have leftover pasta and after the fact the pot was not used within the last 24 hours, the leftover pasta, you can do that after the fact. Or the example we gave is if you have no other choice and you're having a very large event, or the shafat hak. Any other questions? Now we're going to get into some fun stuff. Din Michael Chorif. This principle we said that sharp food that the taste is spoiled and therefore does not have the potency to make something usher. Talking about a regular food. But with regards to a Michael Chorif, a sharp food, the din is different. Until now, we're speaking about foods that are not chorif. They're not a sharp food. Ava Michael chorif, a sharp food could go into noin, like a radish, botzel, an onion, shum, garlic, chazeres, karein, peres chamutzim. Sour type of fruits. A very salty fish. They do have the potency to take a spoiled taste and make it fresh. If somebody cooked a sharp food, that was part. Let's say it was onions or it was garlic or horseradish or green, whatever. In a fleshige pot, there's not a bas yoima. Dina kilin is bash b'gdera bas yoima. It has the same halacha as if the pot was a ben yoima. One would not be allowed to eat that together with dairy. Okay, so we see that a Michael Chorif has the power to be able to draw out the taste and to make the taste into a fresh taste. By way of a mushal, someone says a sharp line, or a sharp comment, a sharp line, it could sting. It carries potency. So we're saying over here that the sharp food has the potency to turn over the food inside, the taste of the food inside into a fresh taste. Now, there's another halacha about using a knife called duchka de sakina, the pressure of the knife. Halacha yadzayin, it chumra acheres nishnisa. There's another chumrah regarding a Michael Chorif. There's a special halacha regards to a knife. When someone cuts a food with a knife, the knife penetrates into the food. That causes an absorption of taste from the food to the knife. So long as the knife is cold, there will be no absorption of taste, unless you're cutting a sharp food. If someone cuts a sharp food in conjunction with the pressure of the knife, and also the sharpness of the food, it absorbs from one another. Someone took a sharp food and they cut an onion with a fleshige knife, right? So you now have the pressure, you're cutting into, you have the duchka, the pressure, the penetration, you also have the sharp food. Those two in conjunction, for example, if someone cut a knife, I'm half asleep today, cut an onion with a fleshige knife, also lechol you're not allowed to cook or eat this onion with dairy because it now has a fresh taste. There's a taste of meat inside it. The same would be in the reverse. If you took a dairy knife and cut an onion, you're not allowed to eat that onion with meat. Even though the knife was not used within the last 24 hours, we already explained. Regarding a Michael Chorif, there's no din of ein ben yoyim. So we see that the halacha is teaching us that there's a special law with regards to sharp foods. When we have a sharp food and we have conjunction with that and we have penetration, we have the pressure of the knife, we're going to cause an absorption, even though there was no heat there. Which brings me to one of my favorite pet peeves. It's not so easy to trafe up a kitchen. It's possible. But one of the most common areas where people make mistakes is with regards to this issue. They'll take a fleischiger knife, cut an onion, this part of the onion is left over. Okay, you're not supposed to leave it overnight. That's separate halacha, but it's around, it's sitting on the counter, whatever. Someone's like, oh yeah, you're making myself an omelet with cheese. That's not kosher, it's straight. Mamish, right away. So therefore, what my recommendation is, mitzvah Hashem, when you all set up your homes, should be for very, very inexpensive, you can buy a set of knives just for parts. Victorlux knives are like the ones that cut very well, and I think they're popular. And you get a different color handle, and you have a certain color green is for parv, and you have a habit of only cutting vegetables with the parv knife, no matter what you're doing. You're cooking for Shabbos, whatever you're doing, it's always with the parv knife. And then you don't have this issue, remember, life is complicated enough, we have to remember what the onion is. It's not going to happen. So habitually get into the habit of only using parv knives to cut vegetables. Then you avoid all problems. So even when I'm helping out in the kitchen for Shabbos, right? Shabbos food is going to be fleshig. I'll use a parv knife with a cutting board to cut any vegetables. Avoid the issue. Yeah.
You need more than just that knife. You need dishware, spoons.
No, you don't. No, I'll explain to you why. Because no, you need a fleshig set of dishes to eat with for all that. But this issue about the pressure of creating an absorption is specifically regarding a knife or a fork when you're digging into something. A spoon that just picks something up does not dig into something. The same way with pressure.
What about the knives that don't have supposed to get that doesn't?
The knives that are not serrated are easier to clean, but still will cause the absorption because it's going to dig into the food. It's going to cut something. There's the pressure that goes in, the dukkha, the penetration. And the truth is, a fork could also be that way, but usually you're not taking a fork to cut open an onion. It's a very inefficient way of operating. So I'm just talking about, I'm not discussing primitive methods. Okay, so this is just it's an eitzah toiva. Get the habit. Any questions? No, are we good? We move on? Okay. So until now, we learned about eating dairy after meat, and we said we wait 6 hours, that's our custom, and all those wonderful things. What about in the reverse? Eating meat after dairy. It's talking about eating dairy after meat. To eat meat after dairy, ain't tzorich, we don't have to wait. We don't have to wait 6 hours. Or someone who ate a soft cheese and wants to eat meat afterwards, they have to wash their hands. Because you can have some remnants of fattiness of the cheese stuck to the hands. You have to wash your hands. The gum, the kanech has piv, to rinse one's mouth, right? So if a person ate something that was chewy, you have to either eat a part of food to cleanse your teeth, or you can floss, so rinse your mouth, both. Someone who just drank a cup of milk, didn't actually touch it, then you don't have to wash your hands, you don't have to floss your teeth, but you do have to rinse your mouth. It's obvious, correlating. And you do have to also make a bracha chreina, because we're not allowed to have milchiks and fleshits in the same meal, even with the requisite waiting period of time. Some people have the minhag Vina or HDS. Well, some people have a minute of waiting half an hour after having dairy or cheese, and we wait an hour, according to the Zohar brings down an hour. So dairy is easier to digest. Now that's in general when it comes to most dairy, but there is also a kind of dairy which is known as Gvina Kosher, aged cheese. Halacha Yutes, Mishachal Gvina Kosher, someone who ate an aged cheese, and a Gvina Yeshon about Shisha Chadoshim, that's cheese that's 6 months old, or cheese that's holy. Not HO. I don't want to joke. But it's like the cheese, the Swiss cheeses that have all these holes in it, and very sharp cheese. Or Gvina Mitzvah, so cheese that's holy, davens 3 times a day and all that. Okay. So the minig is that we do wait 6 hours after a sharp cheese. Why? Because this cheese, the word pungent, I get it right, has a pungent taste. It's got a strong kick to it. I'm not into this stuff. I just go regular. My father, blessed memory, he was a Sephardi. I mean, I'm also Sephardi because of that, but my father liked Sephardi dishes. He liked this feta cheese, these cheeses, the exotic cheeses. He would cook them on Sunday morning. He'd make breakfast. Okay, I could smell the wafting smell of the eggs he would make from 3 blocks away. I was coming from Shul. I used to leave the house. I couldn't take it. It wasn't for me. Anyway, the expression is al you can't argue when it comes to taste, but I'll be with you in a moment. And also so the taste stays in the mouth for a long time. Most cheeses that are found today, they're not considered gvina kasha, novad, hagvinas hashveitzorias, except for the Swiss cheeses. But them is land. So they have a lot of fattiness and also have a strong taste. Therefore, let me just explain. It is incumbent upon the hashkacha to indicate on the package of the cheese, if it is aged, they'll say aged 6 months or more, and some of them will say 10 months more. But if it's more than 6 months, it is a 6-hour cheese. There's also, so Parmesan cheese is a 6-hour cheese. There is something known as Parmesan style. It's not really aged for 6 months. It's just style. It may not be Parmesan really. There's other cheese that are also 6 hours. Romano cheese is 6 hours. Sharp cheddar could be 6 hours depending on how long it's aged. Now, just be mindful of that. But again, if you look on the package, it doesn't say aged 6 months or more, then it's not a 6-hour cheese. And Hashkacha would have to write that because that's a kashrus responsibility. Now that's all good when it comes to buying a packaged product. But we know that there are times in our life when we go to a restaurant, right? And if we're going to a fancy dinner, a milchika restaurant, and they're going to charge us $29.99 for a personal pie, they have to have some excuse for that. Yes? So they mix all kinds of fancy cheese in it, and they're going to tell you it's the most amazing thing. There's Wonder Bread, whatever, margarita pizza, I don't know all these fancy things, but they're going to mix all kinds of cheese in it. Yes, let's say they're going to say they're putting Parmesan in there, whatever it is. So again, Hashkacha should notify consumer in some way, maybe put on the menu, aged cheese or whatever, or let them know it's Parmesan to people, but be mindful of that, so they're not going to leave the restaurant and then have flesheks within 6 hours of that. But I also wanted to mention that there is an opinion that says that if the Parmesan cheese is mixed in with other foods and is baked or cooked, then the sharpness goes away. That's the opinion of the Yad Yehuda. But in the Lubavitch, we don't really follow this opinion, this leniency. We don't really follow that. I'm just mentioning it because there are some Jews from a kind of from Yidden that would follow that opinion possibly, so just for your awareness. But in the Lubavitch, we're not lenient in that regard. Also be mindful not to have 6-hour cheese on a Friday afternoon, because it could spoil your Shabbos meal. Had that Shiloh one, somebody had I don't know, and they have to wait very late to have their flesheks, so it's just about being mindful and schedule accordingly. Okay, any questions? You got a question? Yes. Oh, Hashem. What was the question anyways? I'm curious. So there may be even others, but the ones I know of are sharp cheddar and Romano. Most cheeses made in America are not aged. Now, the next set of halachas gets into really habits. So this that I said before, that if you had leftover pasta and the place you could pop, and it was and not using it within 24 hours after the fact, you could, yeah, it's all true. But we shouldn't plan to do these things. You said that's what plan is like. But also, it can get very confusing. So we also need to be mindful when it comes to keeping Netflix and Fleischig separate, or if we have a meal, let's say I'm having we're gonna have a Fleischig meal, like we have challah, leftover challah, the challah is par before it arrives at the Shabbos table. And then I've heard it said that some kids would finger them and will touch them in all kinds of ways. If their hands are not clean and they're eating chicken or Fleischig, whatever it is, the challah no longer remains really parve anymore. So you have to be mindful of that. So just a general guideline would be that the challah that remains on the challah board in a civilized home where there aren't all kinds of things happening that are unwanted, so that remains par. It hasn't really gone to everybody's plate. But once it leaves that oasis, if you will, and it goes to everybody's personal plate, then at that point you have to assume at some point it could have had a contact with meat, and therefore it's going to consider to be inflation. Even if there's leftover challah, you want to have it, that's fine, but just be mindful not to have it with dairy. Okay, let's look at that inside. The Rishonim were strict with regard to basar v'cholov of Pasku, and they ruled sha'asa lachtech gevina. One's not allowed to cut cheese, afilat zeinenes, even cold cheese. Besakim b'sari with a fleischiger knife. You're not allowed to do that because it's not proper practice. There are other issues. One should also not take a fleischiger knife, cut a piece of bread with the intention of having it at a dairy meal. Why? Why should you not do this? Because sometimes there is a remnant of film, of fattiness on the blade of the knife. And by you cutting into the bread, it's now going to absorb some of that fattiness. If you have no other knife, let's say you're in the middle of the wilderness, you're camping out. So then you can clean the knife. You can use it for cold use like that. Because again, you're like the matzah dafik, you don't really have too much choices. Through stabbing the knife in untouched earth 10 times. This would make a fantastic TikTok video. Jewish people go out in their backyards late at night, with the moonlight, and stab it into the earth 10 times. You saw a video like that?
I did, but it wasn't good. I was looking cute, but wait. He found out how to talk to a knife, it wouldn't be good. I never tried that.
This is it. But what's behind it? The idea is that when you cause abrasive push against the blade, you're actually cleaning the blade. Now, the good news is today, in our contemporary society, we don't have to bring the knife outside and do that. We can take a piece of steel wool in our kitchen in the comfort of our sink and just rub it. It accomplishes the same thing. Shulchan Aruch brings down this concept. Yes? The same idea. Okay. Some people are makbid to have a carved knife, cutting knife. It's also a good idea, by the way, for the Shabbos table, carved cutting knife. Someone should buy two separate types. So when it comes to all kinds of dishes, obviously, right? So you have to have fleishik, the milk. Now, if they have separate patterns, mitzvah and all, you go to our shop. So you're gonna get the best thing to do is have a separate pattern for the milk condition, the flesh condition, so they're not going to get mixed up. In a commercial setting, it's just all commercial grade. It's usually all looks all the same. It's not there for show. So then what they do is they paint the pots. They'll put like a red paint on it. It's going to be for fleischigs, and blue would be for dairy, or green would be for parv. You have to do that. So you have to have a way to identify what the status of the vessel is, and all kosher caterers operate this way. Some way or another, they can identify the vessel. But don't, if you're making only one siman, you don't make the siman on the fleshig side. Because the minig Yisrael is, if you're only making one siman, is to do it on the dairy side. But if the prevailing custom is, if you're only doing one, to make it on the dairy side, a person is going to be a guest in someone else's house, and they see, oh, these pots have been painted, they'll think, oh, they're dairy when they really were meat, because this person had a different system. So we should stick to the system. And this is also based on a pasuk. It says I think it's in the Navi somewhere, charitzi cholo. Charitz means to engrave, to make some kind of a siman on the dairy. It's actually a story. There was a blood libel, terrible story about the classical accusations, and the Rav was there, and the Rav, so they took a knife that said on it Pisori, and they claimed that it was used to kill Christian boy or something. I don't know details of what the story was exactly, but the knife said on it Pisori. And then the Rav called in a non-Jewish housekeeper, the witness by the trial, and he asked her, you work Jewish homes. She said she worked in many Jewish homes, and do they mark their dishes? Yeah, they mark their dishes. And she said they only mark the dairy side. That was a proof that this was not coming from a Jewish home. Anyway, it's not dumb. It's an interesting story. Okay. Well, I think we should stop here. So actually, we have another minute. We'll do one more halacha. Kapalis. You have these salt dishes, right? You put the oil inside, you dip the food inside, or you take with your fingers. The minig was to have separate vessels for salt. One for meat, one for dairy. Because there remains residue in the salt. Today we have a salt shaker. We don't actually stick our fingers into the salt, so therefore the concern of having residue inside the salt really is mitigated. Therefore, it's not so likely or so common that remnants of food would get into the salt. Therefore, you don't have to have two separate vessels. It's possible to have separate ones. It's not a requirement, but a good practice. But the same is, by the way, be careful when using ketchup or some of the other condiments. Let's say pouring ketchup, don't put it directly on the pizza itself. Although, pour it on the plate and enjoy the pizza, but keep the ketchup hot that way. The same would be for mustard, flesh, whatever. Yeah.
So, if I see, I don't have to be separate, but what I do is like, I'll just season it with cold cheese, just put pizza, and that's fine, right?
100% fine. It's also valuable for another reason, because when you take spices and you pour them over a steaming pot, that can cause some sort of issue of infestation at some point. It can start to have webbing and whatever it is, and eggs can grow and all that. So it's an important habit for two reasons: to keep it truly parv and also to avoid infestation issues. Thank you very much. Have a good Shabbos. It's Hashem. Next week I'm teaching on Monday, something with Rabbi Hanoka is going to take over my spot on Friday. Was good our slots. Have a good Shabbos. Can someone figure out how to turn this off? I can do this.
You're okay.